Greetings from LA, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our journeys, our discussions, our discoveries, and our explorations with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2024. And specifically, I'd like to focus our attention, if I may, on one of the two films that's included in this release made by Criterion at spine number 232, and it is this: A Story of Floating Weeds and Floating Weeds, two films by Yasujiro Ozu. And this, on the occasion of this year, 2024, Criterion is re-releasing this on this Blu-ray, these two films in a single release. And so today, I'd like to focus our attention on the second of such two films, and this is the work which is described as being from the year 1959, and the name of the filmmaker is Yasujiro Ozu. And the name of the work is Ukigusa, or as it's known in English, Floating Weeds. This is another majestic and brilliant and beautiful and serene and delicate film, which is described as being from the year 1959, and it is the script is credited to Kogo Noda and Yasujiro Ozu, based upon the script by Ikeda in 1934, which is in turn a reference to the fact that this is the story structure based upon the earlier film from 1934, which is one of the two films in this Criterion release, which is why it's a great double bill. But the latter film, again, is from 1959. It is a sound film, and the photography, the director of photography is the famous Kazuo Miyagawa, and this is a work which, according to the materials, including the great commentary track by Roger Ebert, this is a film that was directed by Yasujiro Ozu for Daiei. And this is a film which, among its great cast, we have people like Ganjiro Nakamura and Haruko Sugimura and Machiko Kyo and others. This is again, one of the great films, one of the masterpieces of Yasujiro Ozu's film output. 1959's film Ukigusa, or as it's known in English, Floating Weeds. And so Floating Weeds is one of those magical experiences. Much like the earlier film, A Story of Floating Weeds is one of those magical experiences. It's a story about family. It's a story about parents and children, mothers and sons, fathers and sons, relationships on the rocks, lovers, quarrels, jealousies, submerged feelings and passions, lies and deceit, the desperation of sort of financial straits, and sort of almost crude sexual passions on the prowl, and oftentimes played for humor and comic hijinks. Other times there is a way in which lost love and lost chances and mistaken identities sometimes get the better of people in this story of the ordinary day-to-day moments on the one hand, and those things, those ideas, those feelings, those emotions that could have life-altering implications going forward. It's really powerful and intense emotional work that's just so drawn and so delineated with a degree of passion and force and confidence. With that Ozu flair and style, that is, it's just one of those films that once you see it, it's undeniable of the mastery that's at work here. This is the work which is Floating Weeds, Ukigusa, or Floating Weeds. And I think if we were to try to focus on the story or plot structure, I mean, we're going to be, for those who already know the earlier 1934 film, A Story of Floating Weeds, you'll recognize many of the story beats are almost identical. Although there are certain contours that are different, there are certain maybe complex, maybe there are certain aspects that are augmented or highlighted in one film over the other, and vice versa. That's the nature of this kind of a remake or revisiting of the story material. But it's also to say that Floating Weeds and the story of Floating Weeds are their own films in their own individual, distinct ways. And Floating Weeds is definitely one of those films. So, again, to focus on the story or plot structure of Floating Weeds, we would focus in on this seaside provincial town once again. It's a color film, seaside provincial town, all together with its own lighthouse in the distance to sort of add a kind of geographic structure, a consistent structure to the piece. It's also a nice visual flair that we are introduced to immediately as upon the film's opening, after the credits roll. And we are also privy to the fact that a traveling troupe is coming to, a theater troupe is coming to the seaside area. It's arriving by boat, and this acting troupe is led by the Komajiro character. This is portrayed by the famous Ganjiro Nakamura. And we also have other members of the acting troupe, such as Sumiko, who's played by Machiko Kyo, one of the famous Japanese actors of the 20th century, and also the character of Akayo, who's Ayako Wakao, who's also incredibly one of the key members of this the cast here, one of the key players of this film, Kayo, and other members of the acting troupe visit this area. And the idea is they're going to make a number of performances and hopefully try to make a living, try to get money, and as much money as they can, as much performance money that they can get. They'll be here as long as it's as economically viable for them. And so the plan is to stay here for as long as possible. But it's still transient, it's still temporary, but they'll be here for a while. That's the plan, as long as they can earn a living, as long as they can do good business. Whether or not they're able to do good business or not, that's part of the subplot of the film. There's some aspects of the film where the theater troupe is struggling to get customers, or to get audience members in, paying customers in, and whether or not they'll be able to survive, or whether they need to think about other things too. That's also part of the background scenery, if you will, of this film, as well as the wonderful performances themselves. I mean, we get to see people sitting in the audience with their backs to the camera in this wonderful Ozu framing way, and then the performances that showcase some of the actors on the stage, in particular the character Kayo and also Sumiko, in wonderful performances. You know, Sumiko is the Machiko Kyo character, performing a rather famous Japanese theater passage, I might add. But so this is one aspect of this film, but that is not the end of the tale, because we also understand that the Ganjiro Nakamura character, the leader of the acting troupe, the Komajiro character, we understand that he is visiting one of the people, locals in the community, and that is the Oyoshi character. This is Haruko Sugimura, the famous Haruko Sugimura, the legend Haruko Sugimura, who's appeared in a number of Ozu films, and this is one of her great roles. She portrays someone who is a part of this community, and as soon as they meet, we realize, or they seem to know each other, and there's a suggestion, or there's a feeling that maybe that this is an old customer paying a visit after a long while, that kind of feeling in the air. But slowly but surely, we as audience members get a sense of perhaps there's something more to their relationship, because as the dialogue progresses in their immediate opening moments together, in the first, say, quarter of the film, we realize that they have had a relationship before, and that the Nakamura character has visited a number of times because they've had a relationship in the past. And in fact, Oyoshi's son, who's now grown up and working in the local post office, Kiyoshi, is now grown up and a young man who believes that the Ganjiro Nakamura character is his uncle, where in fact the secret is that the Ganjiro Nakamura character is indeed his father. Now, the young man doesn't know this, but this is a secret that only Komajiro and Oyoshi have. It's kind of an unspoken bond between them. and also an indication of the kind of relationship that they might have had before, and perhaps the possibility of some kind of relationship that could be possible in the present, especially as the plot progresses and we see what happens to the acting troupe, we see what happens to the various relationship strands as well. What will happen? Will the acting troupe really need to leave the seaside town? Because, as I said at the beginning, the plan is to visit temporarily, stay for as many performances as they can, but then move to another part of the country. But what will that mean for the relationship, especially when we understand as the plot progresses, there are some potential ways in which this family dynamic, as nuanced and as, say, unspoken as it is in certain terms of it, how this might, the contours of this might alter and change over the course of the film. And the way that it might change is the introduction of another aspect of the plot dynamics, which is the Machiko Kyo character. This is the Sumiko character, one of the other members of the acting troupe, a loyal member to Komajiro, the leader of the troupe. Also, they are romantically linked, so they are lovers. But this also engenders a sense of jealousy on the part of the Sumiko character in terms of hearing about where Ganjiro Nakamura's character is going. Why is he visiting this part of the town? Why is he seen fishing with this young man? Who is this? Who are these people that he seems to be having this great interest toward? And she discovers that yes, they had indeed been romantically linked many years ago. And so this raises the jealous ire of the Machiko Kyo character, such that she hatches a plot to have one of the other actors, one of the young actresses, this is Kayo, go to the young man and essentially seduce him as a means of trying to get back at the elder Ganjiro Nakamura character in this sort of circuitous way of revenge, so Machiavellian revenge. But lo and behold, well, what happens if perhaps the plans don't go according, things don't go according to plan, and perhaps maybe true love or kind of intense, honest, passionate romance might develop where the plan had initially been kind of a kind of hollow seduction as a means of getting back at the elder acting troupe leader. So all these complications are afoot, and again, family dynamics, relationship dynamics are threatened. They might be toppled over. There might be risks to the acting troupe. There are aspects of the theater goings on as well, and aspects of the decor and the seaside community. But there's always also a sense of serenity. There's also a sense of calm, even in the face of tragedy or sadness or sorrow. There's a sense of complacency. There's a sense of type of being at peace, even though having to deal with the pain and sorrow of certain situations. Sometimes phrasing that's used in this type of Japanese dramatic convention is mono no aware. But these notions and concerns can lead to very emotionally intense moments in the film, and indeed there's so many emotionally intense moments in the film, as well as emotionally tender moments and moments of, say, the day-to-day, seemingly mundane things, people kind of just sitting around, end quote. But we understand that in the hands of Ozu, sitting and just, say, relaxing, enjoying the time, and maybe having a meal, or just sitting around at the bar having a drink, wondering how are they going to pay for it, just enjoying a day off at the beach. These sorts of moments are the moments that are not everlasting, because they are things that are impermanent and they will go away. But there's that sense of lack of permanence that has a twinge of sadness to it. But again, it's enjoying the moment at the same time. And those moments, I think, crystallized in this beautiful, artistically rendered way. The Ozu style is in full form here, and it's in terms of the fixed camera structure, the frame, and the rigid angles, the way that sometimes the framing and the populating of the frame by certain decorations and ornate objects, or teapots or pots in the distance, or maybe mosquito coils in the corner. These are used to provide essentially portraits, stills, which I think lends itself very nicely to one of the great things about Ozu films, which is you can take a still frame of any part of the film and put it on your wall. It's that kind of beautiful structure, and it's a testament to the power of Ozu's craft, that he's able to provide these ornate portraits that populate his film, that are in many ways providing a type of ambiance of Japanese artistic aesthetic on the one hand, but also couching the characters in the drama, and essentially maybe amplifying or providing a type of cinematic space to the characters in drama as they play themselves out over the course of the film. And as I say, sometimes those moments can be quite dramatic. I mean, there's some very famous scenes in Floating Weeds involving a confrontation in the rain, and there's the way that we see raindrops falling in the foreground with some of the characters speaking in the mid-ground area. It's very dramatic, and there's a lot of action in terms of movement and motion. And sometimes the action and movement might be just the smoke from a burning mosquito coil, or maybe it could be just maybe that certain flower petals fall, or maybe we see in the distance a small boat moving, or maybe it's people walking down the street anticipating the arrival of the acting troupe, etc. Or maybe the way that the poster looks in the distance, or a little bottle in the foreground that might mimic the lighthouse in the background. Things of this nature showcase, I think, a certain geographical space and use of objects that are meant to sort of suggest a timelessness, but also a way of engaging with the drama and the character of the stories, because we understand that we also see the people framed within these spaces. We see Ganjo Nakamura, we see Haruko Sugimura, and Machiko Kyo and others framed in these spaces. And they're speaking with each other, sometimes with the eye line slightly off center of camera. And when they cut to this person they're speaking to, sometimes the eye lines don't match in a sort of conventional Hollywood way that we might be thinking about. But that's not the point of Ozu's style, right? The point of Ozu's style is to provide a sense of a kind of look and feel, and then also have that look and feel take a certain sense of prominence, and then also let the actors and the characters give us their stories within the space in their own way. And it's a beautifully drawn and rendered style, made so vivid through the photography and the framing. I know, again, Kazuo Miyagawa's director of photography here, very, very famous. And also the performances, Machiko Kyo and Haruko Sugimura, really wonderful. And Ganjiro Nakamura is the one of the main characters here, and it's one of the great performances. There's so much anger and expectation, and sometimes you might see slight dampness in the side of his eyes when some emotionally intense moment is happening. But there's always a sense of dignity. There's always a sense of showing emotion, but not overflowing with emotion. I mean, Ozu has this way of expressing emotion in his films that is not necessarily showcasing it and shouting and yelling to a great degree. There is there are some moments of intensity, mind you. There's actually some moments of physical altercation as well. But there's also moments of the digestion of emotion. There's also the moments of internalizing it and making it one's own inner struggle, in a manner of speaking, a kind of tolerating the pain in order to maintain a sense of a kind of ephemeral, say, peace. Status quo in a very Japanese, human-to-human contact kind of way. So this type of expression is showcasing the performances of these great actors so well. So Ganjiro Nakamura's performance here is truly stunning and really beautiful, as well as the other performances. So and it's great too that we see other people, even in smaller roles, but other people that are we recognize from other Ozu films, such as Chishu Ryu, I should mention to Koji Mitsui or Hideo Mitsui, who played a very key role in the earlier film as well from 1934 called The Story of Floating Weeds. His role here is slightly different. It's quite different than his role in the earlier film, but still it's a very memorable and quite a great one. And there are also levels of tragedy and sadness. There are also levels of comedy and humor, and the humor can take all sorts of ranges, and sometimes it can be quite bawdy and quite even sexually suggestive as well. So there's a way in which this film, and also there's ways in which we see generations, parents and children. Sometimes we see, as part of the acting troupe, a child interacting with a kind of grandfather figure that has elements of, say, child acting in Ozu films. There are a lot of Ozu films that involve children, but there are also ways in which that also touches upon certain key emotional moments of the film that are timeless and that have a certain accessibility that I think just make this film so powerful upon any watch you make of this. This is one of the great Ozu films, one of my favorites of Yasujiro Ozu, and I'm so glad it's getting this re-release in this way. This is the work which is called Floating Weeds. The Criterion Collection has re-released this set, or this double bill, if you will, A Story of Floating Weeds and Floating Weeds. These are the two films by Yasujiro Ozu, and today we have been speaking about the second of the two films, which is Floating Weeds. And it's a single Blu-ray disc, and so I have that in the player. And so as soon as you put the disc in the machine, you have the choice of selecting one of the two films. So let me select the second film, Floating Weeds. Oh, by the way, it's a Blu-ray menu with this, or with the moving images montage type of Blu-ray menu. So it's a really great menu, but just for the case of YouTube copyright considerations, I've just blocked it out for purposes of this video. But I hope you can understand. But in any way, that is the opening when you put the Blu-ray into the machine. So let me select Floating Weeds, and when you select Floating Weeds, it'll take you to the Floating Weeds menu, and you have this option of watching the movie, and then there is the trailer. So we have the trailer that's part of the supplements. It's a really nice trailer, but also the commentary track. So there's the trailer, and then there's a commentary track. And the commentary track, and I quote, "This commentary track, recorded for the Criterion Collection in 2003, features film critic Roger Ebert." So this is the Roger Ebert commentary track, and I love this. I really love this. Roger Ebert, he immediately says that he doesn't claim to be in any way type of Ozu expert or Japanese film expert, but he's looking at this from a type of composition and story structure beats, and in his way, in his great way that he always does, Roger Ebert has this way of making film discussions so friendly and warm and welcoming, and also pointing out the details that I think are very key and very insightful, and just presenting them in a way that are very easy to access, very easy to understand, and that warm voice that he has. Roger Ebert when I grew up, Roger Ebert was one of the key film critics for me, Siskel and Ebert, and to hear his voice in particular, it has that warm, welcoming tone to it. So what a legend, what a legacy of Roger Ebert. So it's great to have part of that legacy still alive and well and intact in terms of the great commentary track that he has for Floating Weeds. And it's really great too, because he says he's not an expert in these films, but he has a great command over a lot of the details as we watch it. And he's talking about how the frame is populated, and sometimes the way that Ozu will decorate objects in the frame. He might even do it in maybe instead of paying attention to continuity, how an object looks from shot to shot to shot. Sometimes he might change the positioning of an object as he goes from shot to shot to shot, because according to Ebert, Ozu is not necessarily concerned as much with maintaining a consistent continuity between shot to shot to shot, but rather Ozu is interested in how the frame looks and how the frame is populated. And if continuity goes out by the wayside, then that's the way it is. But he's going to have certain objects the way he wants. He's going to be at a certain angle the way he wants it. And so and that holds true also for how characters are framed. Sometimes we have a lot of shots from the back, with shots from behind. We don't see the faces necessarily, and sometimes two or three characters might be sitting in a kind of diagonal line. That kind of pattern is then repeated a lot of ways throughout the film, in ways that are parallel to action beats that we see early on in the film, but sometimes also contrasting to action beats that we see so early on in the film, as a kind of bookmarking structure, or as a way of maybe indicating to us how the characters have changed, as we see physical composition patterns repeated, but even in those repetitions, we understand the characters have changed because of the plot beats that have occurred between the space of those bookmarks. So, um, this is absolutely great. And then he talks too, Roger Ebert does, about how uh, Ozu was known to look through the camera viewfinder a lot. So that is an indication, according to Ebert, about how he's concerned about what was being framed. He's also concerned about things about how the ceilings are framed and the floors are framed, angles of the shots, etc. And then too, speaking about a little bit of the details of the filmmaking, and how usually Ozu is associated with shochiku, but this is not a shochiku film. This is a daiei film, and so he's reminded of other filmmakers like Kurosawa, who was usually accustomed to making films at the Toho studios, but he did make daiei films such as Rashomon. Rashomon by Kurosawa incidentally featured Machiko Kyo, who's also featured in this film, Floating Weeds. So, and it's a really brilliant performance by Machiko Kyo. There's a scene involving her and Ganjo Nakamura, where she is striking a match and trying to light a cigarette, and there are many matches there's more than one match. So it's a really it's in the performance, and those little performance. You look at Machiko Kyo's face as she registers, just the detail. They're so wide ranging, so surprising. I'm so glad Roger Ebert highlights this. It's one of the great performances. And I'm surprised every time I see it. I discover something new in a great performance, and oh, lovely, absolutely lovely. And so yes, the Roger Ebert uh, commentary track is utterly sublime. I recommend it wholeheartedly, and I'm glad it's carried over from before, from the earlier DVD edition. But I'm so glad it's still made available here, because you learn so much. I learned so much, and it's done in this wonderful, welcoming, charming, warm, down-to-earth way that Roger Ebert is known for. So well done for that. I'm so glad it's made available here. You've got to check it out if you haven't done so already. It's a real classic. And then, as I mentioned, there's the trailer, and that's it. Oh, by the way, I should point out that oh yes, yep, yeah, and the trailer. Excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself. Then that's it as far as the supplements go associated with the 1959 film Floating Weeds. There is, of course, some Floating Weeds information in the essay, which is the comprehensive essay by Donald Ritchie, which we'll talk about in a separate video. So there's that. But in terms of supplements linked to Floating Weeds, that's it. So when I say that's it, in terms of quantity, it might seem like it's lacking in quantity, and that's what we got in the earlier DVD edition. So please keep that in mind. There isn't anything new. So if you were looking for something that was new, then and unfortunately you're not going to get it here. But you are getting a wonderful film. Oh, I should point out too, in my excitement, I want to point out too about the presentation. I forgot to mention those details. I apologize, but let me mention this now. In terms of the presentation, this is purported to be based on a 4K restoration, and it says in the booklet here about the masters, it says, and I quote, "Floating Weeds is presented in the aspect ratio of 1.37 to 1. This 4K restoration was undertaken by Kadokawa Corporation in association with the Japan Foundation from the 35mm original camera negative at Imagica Entertainment Media Services. The original Monaural soundtrack was remastered from the 35mm original soundtrack positive by Audio Mechanics." So I really enjoy this. It's not overly produced. Let me put it that way. I mean, there are moments when it does feel somewhat digitized. You can kind of tell in some places, but I don't think it's so overly distracting, and I think the overall effect of the restoration is quite strong. So I like it very much. I mean, I've always liked how this looked. There is a kind of I mean, I'm used to it not looking overly pristine anyway, but I think that adds to the kind of nostalgia appeal that I think makes Ozu film watches really warm and promising. So I have nothing against watching this on a prior pre 4K restoration release. I think it's always looked great, but if you want to go for this 4K restoration version, it's quite good indeed. So please check it out if you can. But I'm sorry, I'm just all over the place. I apologize. Maybe I'm overwhelmed by my enthusiasm for the film overall. But it's just going back to the supplements discussion. I should point out that the supplements, yes, it might look on paper to be lacking in terms of quantity of supplements. And if you feel that way, I understand. Much like the other discussion of the story of Floating Weeds, we're not getting anything new per se, but the commentary is really brilliant. It really is brilliant, and it's you learn so much about it, and so I just want to applaud that. And if watching the film with the commentary track, watching the commentary track a number of times, in fact, I think is gonna go a long way. I really do think so. So that I think might help to alleviate any of those concerns that some might have in terms of not having more supplements. Again, the commentary track for this and the earlier film by Donald Ritchie is incredible. So absolutely incredible. So please check those out if you can. So that's it as far as my discussion of Floating Weeds is concerned, but I want to do one more discussion very briefly in the next video, just concluding my thoughts about this great release of these two great Ozu films. Today we've been talking about the film which is Floating Weeds. So my dear friends, thank you so much, and so until the next video, I very much hope that you continue to be happy and healthy and well, and that you continue to watch a lot of great movies, including Floating Weeds, including A Story of Floating Weeds, including other films by Yasujiro Ozu, including other films in the Criterion Collection, and beyond. So until the next video, my dear friends, stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.